Book 2, Chapter 8 of Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, by Lady Florence Dixie. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, Book 2, Chapter 8. What news, Evie? The speaker has risen from a low wooden stool just outside the verandahed porch of a pretty, straggling, rambling cottage, hidden amidst many and various creepers, whose parasitical arms interlace with each other in bewildering confusion. All around stretch dark pine woods, far as the eye can reach, as it scans their broad expanse through the cuttings in the forest fashioned by the hand of man. Gloria de Lara it is who thus questions the newcomer, a tall, powerful-looking man, with thick, bushy beard and whiskers, and a clean-shaven upper lip. He is dressed in the habiliments of a navvy, and carries on his back a bag of tools. Thus he throws down as he replies, "News, Gloria? Much what I expected. You are to be hunted down by every means at the command of Scotland Yard. Warrants are out not only for your arrest, but for Lady Flora's as well, and the military are to be employed to assist the police in suppressing the riotous crowds, as such are termed the people who are agitating in your favor. Pandulph Chertsey has resigned. Bernie was in the house last night to hear him give his reasons. He says Chertsey made a splendid speech, in which he advocated an appeal to the country to settle this question, and a fresh trial for you. His remarks were received in gloomy silence by both progressists and nationals, though loudly applauded by the D'Estrangites. But the two former have no intention to appeal at present. They hate you and yours too much, Gloria. They want to crush you first, before they do anything else. To accomplish this, dog and cat though they be, they will be amicable in order to attain their end." "I know that," she answers with a sad smile. "But I will do my best to balk them until my work is done. Then they may do as they please." "Hush, Gloria!" exclaims Evie Ravensdale with a shudder. "Do not speak of harm befalling you. Oh, God forfend it! I could not survive it." She smiles again, still sadly, as she lays her hand on his arm, and looks at him with the dark sapphire eyes that have haunted him day and night for many a year with a strange and yearning love, which he often found hard to fathom. He understands it all now, however. There is no mystery about that love any longer. Its cause, Gloria de Lara. "It is I who should say hush, Evie dear," she says gently. "And it is you who must not speak thus. Remember the great cause we have both at heart, the glorious cause that must and shall win. On its behalf, are we not ready to face trial and trouble and many an anxious hour? Oh, Evie, I remember our vows." Yes, he remembers them well enough. Is he not striving to fulfill them even now? But the future, threatening as it does the person of all that he holds most dear, is dark and fearsome in Evie Ravensdale's anxious mind. "Did you manage to see Flora Desmond?" she inquires, breaking thus the silence which has followed her last words. "Yes, Gloria," he answers. "And that reminds me that I have much to tell you. Lady Flora has not been idle. She is indeed a most wonderful woman. There she is, working away in the heart of London, with a warrant for her arrest duly out, with detectives and police in every direction, and yet not an idea have they where she is, thanks to the people's loyalty. God bless them, is all Gloria says. She is eagerly awaiting the information he has to give her. She is not working single-handed either. Who do you think has joined the White Guards, Gloria? You will never guess." "Who?" she says anxiously. "Why, Lady Manderton, and Launcelot Trevor has offered his services to Lady Flora." "Lady Manderton!" Gloria can hardly believe her ears. She looks incredulously at the speaker. "It is true, Gloria, however impossible it may seem, and a real enthusiastic worker she is. However, to business. Lady Flora told me to tell you that she has sent picked messengers from the White Guards to every one of our volunteer centers, so as to be able to keep up active communication with them all. The code adopted works admirably, and has been arranged with extreme skill and forethought. In a few days all will be ready for your campaign. She suggests that you should hold first a meeting in the Hall of Liberty. The White Guards will be in readiness for that one. If the police and military interfere, every means for escape will be at hand. Before they have time to look round, you will be heard of at York, where you will be attended by the Women's Rifle Corps, and so on. Rapidity of action will be the characteristic feature of your campaign. A regular will-o'-the-wisp crusade, in fact. Of course, it will be attended by a good deal of risk, but it is quite certain that the people must be appealed to, and those who are supporting you now not left in the lurch. God grant there be no more bloodshed." "Yes, God grant it indeed," she answers fervently. "Nevertheless, Evie, 'twere better thus to shed one's blood than to submit any longer and without protest to the present state of things. Whatever may be the outcome of this revolution, I have no fear but that it will lead up to victory in the future. I may never see the day. What matter? It will come." She laughs softly, a low, triumphant laugh, as her mind's eye strives to pierce the murky darkness of the future. Instinctively, she realizes what lies behind that impenetrable veil, and sees with the glance of prophecy the promised land beyond. It is thus with all reformers. If to them was only vouchsafed the cold, sneering support which the world generally bestows upon early effort, they would sink and die beneath the venomed shafts of the unbelievers. But these latter do not see the noble visions which are given to the pioneers of the future, visions which beckon them forward and unfold to their eager gaze the triumph of their labors in the establishment of that for which they have given their lives. "Well, I will go and get rid of this disguise," observes the Duke with a smile. "This beard and these whiskers are uncommonly hot, Gloria. By the by, when does Mrs. Delara sail?" "In 2 days, Evie. She goes by the White Star Line," answers his companion. "I left her in the study just before meeting you. Go in and see her before you change." He passes on through the porch, outside of which she had found her sitting on his arrival, and enters the cottage, and Gloria takes up her old position to ponder and think over the situation of affairs, which her trusty messenger has brought to her from the outside world. We have not seen her since that eventful evening, when she was rescued by Flora Desmond and her White Guards from the arm of the law, and safely escorted to Montague House. Here a hasty consultation had been held, and it was at once decided that without delay she must quit the Duke's mansion. Within an hour of her entrance, she had left the ducal residence, and in a suit of plain dark clothes had sought a safe asylum with humble friends in a quarter of the city where no one dreamed of searching for her. The Duke himself had quitted his home to avoid awkward questions, leaving it in the care of his brother, and Mrs. Delara had repaired to her Windsor residence. Communication had been maintained through loyal and trustworthy friends, and from her refuge in the mighty city, Gloria had rejoined her mother and the Duke at the Hut, a tiny, out-of-the-way residence belonging to the latter, situated in the heart of the pine forests that clothe the country for miles around, between Bracknell and Wokingham. From this secluded nook she could hold communication with her friends through the medium of Evie Ravensdale, who, in various disguises, passed to and fro between Bracknell and London daily. Meanwhile, the Devonsmere Ministry had been active. Supported by the Nationals and Progressists, a bill had been hastily passed through the House of Commons and sent up to the House of Lords for approval. It grants the government exceptional facilities for suppressing the public meetings, which may be held by Gloria Delara's supporters. A large number of special constables had been enrolled and entrusted with extensive powers. The military have been ordered to hold themselves in readiness to support the police, and a special proclamation has been issued offering a large reward for the delivery up to justice of the persons of Gloria Delara and Flora Desmond, or any man or woman found actively espousing the former's cause. Armed with these tremendous powers, the Devonsmere Ministry are confident that the revolution will be summarily suppressed, and the chief actors brought speedily to justice. In vain Lord Pandulph Chertsey has warned them against the course they have resolved upon. He is unheeded, for the Ministry have a majority in their favour in both houses, and are determined to enforce their policy rigidly and unrelentingly. All this Gloria Delara knows full well. The situation is thoroughly understood by her, and the risk fully appreciated, but she knows also that she will be faithful to her vow. She is of the same mind now as she was when, as a child, looking over the lovely Adriatic, that feeling had entered her heart which had bidden her go forward and struggle for the cause, even though the struggle should end in death. She made a vow then. Through all these years she has kept it. Now that danger and death stare her in the face, will she draw back appalled? No, 10,000 times no. Her plans are fully formed, and none so fit as Gloria to carry them into effect. In every part of the kingdom she has faithful emissaries at work. Aided by them, large open-air meetings are to be convened, which she will address in turn, vanishing as quickly and mysteriously as she appears. In this way she will be able to hold communication with the people in every part of the country, and scatter broadcast the seeds of her great doctrine. She knows full well that aid and sympathy will come to her from all parts of the world. She is sending messengers in every direction, Mrs. Dallara having volunteered to visit America on behalf of her child's cause. She knows that the flame once kindled will never more be extinguished until victory waves aloft the wand of peace. If in the struggle she be doomed to fall, what matter, so that the great cause triumph? She has the law against her, but law is only strong so long as the people acknowledge it to be just, and agree to obey it. No law is binding or sacred which has not been ratified by the people's approval. There is no natural divine right which gives to a few men the power and authority to impose on millions a command to obey. Might alone can force it. It has been declared that might is right. What if the people defy might, and struggle against its tyranny for the triumph of right? She sits on alone, revolving this truth in her mind. Thought absorbs her with its dreamy influence, carrying her on beyond the present into the great unfathomed future before her. She sees the storm which she has raised angry and defiant, the elements thereof tossed and buffeted, but she knows that after that storm the waves of fury will be stilled in a great calm. Dreaming, Gloria? Of what, pray? She starts. The voice thrills her, for she loves it well. Gloria's contact with the world in her self-imposed duties has not blunted or dulled the instincts of nature. In past days, it was a favorite remark with our grandmothers and grandfathers that woman's connection with the coarser things of life would degrade her by constant familiarity with them. Poor things! They judged of nature from the narrow-minded platforms on which they had been educated, knew nothing of and cared nothing for the sighs of liberty or the rights of nature. Yes, though her life has been one of constant intercourse with man, though she has been and is familiar with the coarser things of life, Gloria loves, and loves truly and well. Hers is not the love of a timid, ignorant girl, longing to escape the captivity in which she has been reared, or the selfish, guilty love of the intrigante, whose love would fade and disappear were it not deemed unholy. Hers is the love of one who, knowing the world well, understanding the character of man, drilled to a knowledge of the laws of nature, yet elects to love one being above all others. Gloria's love is one that, once given, can never die. As with her, so it is with Evie Ravensdale. The world has courted his love, but its wiles have not awoke it. Often, when in loving commune with his friend Hector Destrange, the thought would flash through the young Duke's mind that if Hector had been a woman, the great love of which he felt himself capable would have gone out to her absolutely and without reserve. What was the subtle power that had attracted him to Hector Destrange, which had made him pause on the verge of pleasure's precipice, and, casting to the winds his hitherto selfish existence, has made him body and soul the devoted adherent of the young reformer? Evie Ravensdale knows the reason now. From the moment that he learnt that in Hector Destrange was embodied the person of Gloria Dallara, he understood that the influence of a noble, high-minded, and genuine woman had allured him from the false glare and glitter of the world, and given him an aim in life. Ah, dear Evie, have I not much to think of? In such times as these, thought does not take much rest. She rises as she speaks and links her arm in his. Men have often watched Hector Destrange and the Duke of Ravensdale in this friendly attitude before. Such an ape is fashion that it has become the proper thing for men to walk arm in arm. Doubtless, however, in view of the change which has come about in the altered fortunes of Hector Destrange, it will be suddenly discovered that such an attitude is both unbecoming and improper. So much for the monkey custom and its cousin ape fashion. "Let's go for a stroll, Gloria," he pleads. "The evening is so glorious, and it may be long before we have the chance again of a quiet chat together. We used to enjoy these tete-a-tetes at Montargis when you were Hector Destrange, did we not?" "Yes," she says quietly. "I did love them, Evie. In fact, I think I set too great a store upon them, more than was good for me to do. But they were a true rest and pleasure after toil and anxiety, and I accepted them as such." They have descended a gentle slope as she speaks and entered a glade in the forest. The warm, red glow of the setting sun pierces in parts the thickly grouped pines, and plays upon the ferns and bracken that grow in green luxuriance beneath. The evening commune of the birds is dying into a low twitter, and the rabbits have commenced to peep forth from their burrows to see if all is still, preparatory to indulging in the evening meal, as is their wont and custom at this hour. What is it that throws its shadow across the glade in the wake of Evie Ravensdale and Gloria Delara? As the two saunter slowly along the forest's green pathway, the figure of a man suddenly presents itself at the entrance to the glade, and stands motionless, gazing after the retreating pair. Only for a moment, though, as with a low laugh he turns quickly in the direction of the hut. His movements are peculiar. He does not walk openly up to the cottage, but, concealing himself behind the rhododendron bushes which surround it in thick luxuriance, he stealthily and silently gains the porch, outside of which Gloria Delara was sitting on the arrival of Evie Ravensdale. Passing noiselessly along the veranda which runs round the hut, the man suddenly comes to a halt outside a half-open window and peers in. A logwood fire burns cheerily on the hearth, but there are no lamps as yet in the room, and this is the only light that irradiates it. It is sufficient, however, to enable him to make out the form of a woman seated by the fire. Her elbows are resting on her knees, and her head is bent in her hands, and through the half-opened fingers she is gazing into the glowing blaze. A single ring flashes on the third finger of her left hand, one ring only, but no more. The man's eyes dilate with passion and fury as they watch her. The expression is that of a wild beast gloating upon its prey. This man, too, has a smile of triumph upon his coarse, sensual lips, mingled with malignity and hate. A quick shudder runs through Speranza Delara, for this lonely woman is no other than she, as with a sudden impulse she raises her head and looks towards the window with a scared and startled expression. The man draws quickly back from his post of observation, and passing rapidly along the veranda disappears amidst the thick bushes already mentioned. Too late, however, to conceal his features from the gaze of the woman, who, alas, knows them too well. With a cry of horror she springs forward, and pushing open the window, makes her way out onto the veranda. 2 minutes later, and the tongue of a little tower bell rings out half a dozen sharp warning notes. Evie Ravensdale and Gloria Delara know full well their meaning. Their sound heralds the word danger, and brings them sharply to attention. When, a few minutes later, they reach the hut, they find Speranza anxiously awaiting them. "Evie and Gloria," she says in a quiet, self-possessed voice, in which all trace of excitement is absent, "this is no longer a safe place for either of you. It must be quitted at once. I have just seen him." "Him? Who, mother dearest?" inquires Gloria anxiously. "The worst enemy I have ever known, and therefore yours too, my darling," answers Speranza with a shudder. "Ever right, my child, were you, when you said he was not dead, for I have just looked on the face of Lord Westray." As she speaks, the distant sound of a galloping horse strikes upon their ears. "Evie," says Gloria coolly, a quiet smile lighting up her face, "will you see to the horses being saddled at once?" End of Book 2, Chapter 8. Book 2, Chapter 9 of Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, by Lady Florence Dixie. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, Book 2, Chapter 9. The roar of London's traffic has died away. For a few brief hours, peace has spread her mystic wings o'er the city of wealth and poverty, pleasure and suffering, joy and pain, virtue and crime. In the sumptuous dwellings of the wealthy, the gentry stretch their pampered bodies on the soft couch of ease and warmth, imitated to a nicety by their dependents. In the dwellings of the middle class, comfort, if not absolute sumptuousness, is displayed and enjoyed. In the dwellings of the working class, overcrowding and limited space is the chief characteristic, while in the dwellings of the helpless, homeless, and foodless, the vault of heaven is their canopy, the cold flagstones their couch of rest. Yet above these scenes, so diversified and strange, peace for a few brief hours has spread her wings. The tramp of the tired horse is silent, the patter of millions of feet is still. Even the wandering, homeless, hungry cur is curled up in some byway fast asleep, dreaming, no doubt, of the rich steaks of meat upon which his poor famished eyes had been fixed this afternoon, when the cruel butcher drove him so mercilessly away. But there is a faint glimmer of light stealing through the fast-closed shutters of Mr. Trackham's private room in Verdigris Crescent, and if, like the fairy of old, we obtain ingress therein in some mysterious manner, we shall find that worthy seated in a comfortable armchair, with his head thrown back against a soft cushion, his legs crossed, his elbows firmly planted on the chair's arms, and his hands lightly joined together. A warm fire glows in front of him, and the smile on his face betokens a thorough satisfaction with things in general, and especially with himself. On the opposite side of the hearthrug is another armchair, likewise occupied, but by a man apparently in by no means so placid and contented a frame of mind as Mr. Trackham. He wears a rough coat and waistcoat of Cheviot wool, and his cord riding breeches and black top boots are covered with mud and mire. There is blood on his spurs, too, which betokens a hard usage of the poor beast that has lately carried him. On the floor lies a brown slouch hat and riding-whip, while by their side is a soft satin cushion similar to the one against which Mr. Trackham's head is reclining, and which his visitor has disdainfully tossed on one side. The manner of this man is excited, and he is leaning forward and speaking fast and rapidly. He is a handsome man, but has not a nice face, and grey hairs are beginning to mingle in his thick beard, whiskers, and mustache, as well as amidst the once raven locks of his hair. He has thick, sensual lips, 2 rows of fine white teeth, and a restless, roving expression in his dark eyes. "I tell you, Trackham, I have seen them all 3, and I greatly fear that Mrs. Delia recognized me. Maybe she did not, for the moment she looked round I made off as hard as I could, and have ridden straight from the spot to this place. But if she did, there will be great danger of our plot being discovered, and the idea to me is simply maddening after all I have done and risked and put up with to carry it successfully to an issue." Mr. Trackham refuses, however, to get excited. "Pray listen, my lord," he says suavely. "I think it is extremely unlikely that Mrs. Delia recognized you, but even if she did, of what avail? She cannot prove it, and her statement would only be regarded in the light of falsehood, invented to screen Gloria Delia, or else in the light of hallucination. We managed that point very well at the trial. No, no, have no fear on that score. The only point to be looked at is this. If Mrs. Delia recognized you, or even took alarm at seeing a stranger in her child's place of refuge, she, and those with her, have in all probability sought a fresh hiding-place. If this be so, their arrest will have to be postponed until we can lay hands on the spot of their new asylum. It is a pity, for my efforts appear to be on the verge of crowning success. However, cheer up, my lord. Trackham has never yet failed in any of his jobs, and will not in this one." "I was a fool to act as I did," exclaims Lord Westray, for it is no other than he. but I could not resist the impulse, Trackham. How do you propose to act if tomorrow we find the birds have flown?" "I propose this, my lord," answers Mr. Trackham in a decided voice. "I intend to send round information to Scotland Yard of their whereabouts. Should this information prove too late, I propose to proceed in this wise. I have in my employ a young woman of extremely prepossessing appearance, and without doubt the cutest of all my staff. She has never failed me yet, and I am not apprehensive that she will on this occasion. My instructions to her will be to ascertain Gloria Delara's whereabouts, to join her in this rebellion, to be, in fact, one of her most devoted adherents, until such time as I shall require her to be otherwise. When she has been thoroughly entrusted with the rebels' secrets, nothing will be easier than to transmit them to us. In fact, I think you know what I mean, my lord." "I understand," mutters the other moodily. "You mean to set her to the informer's trade. A female Judas, in fact." "You have it, my lord, extremely well expressed." "Ha ha!" laughs Mr. Trackham quietly as he rubs his hands together and nods approvingly. "And what does your lordship think of my little plan?" he continues inquiringly. "Damned clever and diabolical, Trackham, if you want to know the truth," answers Lord Westray, a shade bitterly. He has fallen pretty low, but this seems indeed the lowest depth of the abyss into which he is invited to plunge. For the being who is an accessory before the fact is every whit as villainous as the being performing the deed. Of course he knows this. "Clever, I grant you, my lord. It is my business to be so. Diabolical, I demur to. All is fair in love and war. But, pardon me, excuse me a moment's absence." And Mr. Trackham, as if struck by a sudden idea, rises and leaves the room. Lord Westray rises too, and begins pacing up and down it. There is a dark, angry look in his eyes, and a cruel smile on his thick lips. "All fair in love and war," he exclaims savagely. "That is a true saying. I loved her, yes, I did love Speranza once, but she scorned and flouted me, and I could not forget that. Even after I married her, I loved her, I believe, though she complained that I treated her cruelly. And what if I did? She was only a woman, and my wife. What business had she to complain? What business had she to take the law into her own hands and go off with that fellow? Ah, I think she counted without her host there, but I was revenged. Yes, yes, I took ample revenge. And then, when she might have made it up, when I offered to remarry her, she flung me from her path, and that girl of hers, whom I thought then was a man, ordered me out of the house. Ah, but I think there again I have come off the victor. I think it is I who have scored. The world believes me dead. Hector D'Estrange, now Gloria Delara, is my murderer. If we lay hands on her, the government is bound to make her pay the full penalty of the law. It will break Speranza's heart, and I shall triumph and be revenged. None shall flaunt or scorn me without ruing it. By God, no one ever shall." The laugh is a horrid one with which these last words are accompanied. It is hard to believe the man a human being. Character of this description is false to nature, surely. Yes, but the education which produced it was false and unnatural too. Human character depends greatly on early teaching. The parent has a heavy responsibility in molding of youth's first impressions. Lady Westray, if from the grave you could arise and look upon your handiwork, perhaps even you, shallow, vain, heartless as you were in life, might shudder and repent. At this stage the door opens, readmitting Mr. Trackham. He walks over to his seat by the fire and reoccupies it. "I have sent for her, my lord," he informs Lord Westray in a businesslike voice. "It has struck me that it will be best to employ my female Judas without any delay. Second thoughts convince me that it would be mere waste of time to communicate with Scotland Yard. I have not the smallest doubt that, as Mrs. Delara caught sight of you, the hut is vacated ere this. At any rate, we will put Leonie on the track and start her from there. I have no fear that she will disappoint us. She has a marvelous genius for the discovery of the hidden." "A human bloodhound and Judas combined in one," laughs Lord Westray. "I am curious, Trackham, to behold this monstrosity." "A curiosity which is about to be gratified," remarked the other coolly, as a low tap is heard on the door of the room in which these two men are hatching their diabolical plans. "Come in, Leone." The door opens softly, and a woman glides in. She is small and of slight build, with a bright, fair complexion, even, firm mouth, dark grey eyes fringed round with a wealth of lashes, which at once attract the onlooker by their extraordinary thickness. Her hair, which is cut short, is soft, glossy, and wavy, and is parted on one side, clustering upon her forehead and around her face. On this face play the lights and shades of a constantly changing expression, and if ever genius told its tale in eyes, it is indelibly stamped in these. Mr. Trackham smiles covertly as he glances at Lord Westray, and notices the expression of surprise in this latter's face. Leone has walked straight over to Mr. Trackham's chair and is standing beside him. "You want me?" she inquires in a matter-of-fact voice. Apparently, the break of dawn summons is not in the least strange to her. "I do, Leone," answers her master quickly. "I have a little job on hand that I think I can entrust to you, and I rely upon you to carry it out successfully. There is, as you no doubt know, a large reward offered for the apprehension of the adventuress Gloria de Lara, or for such information as may lead to that apprehension. Now, I see no reason why my clever little Leone should not be the person to win that reward, or at any rate a part of it. My commission to you is this. First of all, get speech with this Gloria. This necessitates finding her out. Next, worm yourself into her confidence by a display of zeal which I can perfectly trust you to simulate. Keep me informed of her plans and movements as soon as you are able to speak with certainty of them, and be ready to act as I bid you on receipt of any communication or instruction which I may desire to send you. Now, Leone, remember, I trust this job to you, because there is none so fitted as you to undertake it. I have every faith in your sagacity and prudence. I have heard a good deal of Gloria de Lara's wonderful cleverness. I am mistaken if my little Leone is not her match." There is a glitter in the girl's dark grey eyes, a quiet smile on her lips. "You may trust me," she remarks laconically. "I know I can," answers Mr. Trackham gravely. "I know that very well. Now, Leone, your work begins at once. Gloria de Lara, her mother Speranza de Lara, and the Duke of Ravensdale were seen at a little place called the Hut, near Bracknell, belonging to the Duke. I have reason to think, however, that they have fled that place this very night. You had better go straight there and take up the scent from the spot. I leave all to you. You can draw upon me, you know. Keep me advised of your whereabouts, stick to the letter of my instructions, and send me good news as quickly as possible. I have no more to say, unless it be that you are to effect that which Scotland Yard cannot." "I will," answers this strange laconic creature, as with a slight inclination she turns and leaves the room. "Well, I'm blowed, Trackham, if that is not the queerest elf I ever set eyes upon in my life!" exclaims Lord Westray as the door closes. "Where on earth did you raise her from?" "A pretty elf too, eh, my lord? Hardly a monstrosity," observes Mr. Trackham dryly. "Where did I raise her from, you ask? Well, that's just the point. I don't care to tell you who she is, but I'll tell you this much. She's the daughter of a customer of past days. Her father was a great man. At least, the world said he was. She's got plenty of blue blood in her veins. She's well bred enough. Her mother died here. The great man forsook her, and the child was left in my hands. I found her pretty, remarkably intelligent, and quick-witted. I determined to train her to be useful, and I think I have succeeded. She has certainly proved a most profitable speculation, and repaid the excellent education I have given her. I have no reason to repent my philanthropic act." And Mr. Trackham laughs dryly. "Well, you are a clever fellow, and no mistake, Trackham. I gave you credit for a good deal, but not for rearing detectives from childhood. I thought I knew pretty nearly everything, but this is a new experience," remarks the Earl, fairly surprised. "Yes, my lord, you have seen a good deal and know a good deal. I admit your experience is wide and varied, but not even you know half that goes on in this wonderful city. There's many a queer thing takes place about which outsiders know nothing. It's only natural. What else can you expect in a place like this? And now I think I have no more to communicate for the moment. It will be daylight soon, and I feel I want a snatch of sleep. I will bid you good night, therefore. I don't suppose you will be sorry to follow my example. You have had a pretty long, tiring, and eventful day. Good night, my lord." Saying which, Mr. Trackham rises from his armchair, takes hold of a small hand-lamp standing on a table close by, and with an obsequious bow to the patron, for the sake of whose gold he is serving, leaves the room. For yet another hour that patron paces up and down it, absorbed in moody thought. It is hard to draw the picture of this man, when one thinks how otherwise it might have been had the passions of his youth been curbed, his early life disciplined, and his powers for good fostered and encouraged. If the dream of Gloria de Lara be realized, the time will come when characters such as this will know an existence no longer. But this can only be when the standard of morality is placed on a higher pedestal, and the laws of nature are acknowledged and upheld. End of Book 2, Chapter 9. Book 2, Chapter 10 of Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, by Lady Florence Dixie. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900. Book 2, Chapter 10. Quitting the presence of Mr. Trackham and Lord Westray, Leone has hurried to her bedroom, from which the former personage had so unceremoniously summoned her. The bedroom in question is small and plainly furnished. A scant, square piece of carpet covers the middle of the floor. There are 2 chairs in the room, a tiny iron bedstead, a wash-hand stand, and a large wardrobe. This latter article takes up an ungenerous share of the space which the little room affords, but it is evidently an article of some importance, for Leone goes straight to it and throws it open, displaying to view some half a dozen shelves, upon which a number of suits of clothes of varied and multifarious shapes are neatly arranged. After scrutinizing them for a few minutes, Leone selects a strong, dark-colored pair of riding breeches, gaiters to match, and a loose jacket and waistcoat of the same material, which she lays on the bed. To these are quickly added a gray flannel shirt and a complete silk under-riding suit. She then proceeds with her toilet, and when dressed looks every inch a comely lad of some 17 summers, smart, neat, and natty. Her next act is to pack a small saddle portmanteau with a change of underclothing, toilet, and washing articles, which completes the outfit of Mr. Trackham's youthful detective. For Leone, though a slave, is not unmindful of her personal appearance. She knows she is pretty, and likes to look so, a vanity for which the looking-glass is largely responsible. A small oil lamp burns fitfully in one corner of the room. She fills a tiny kettle with water, and placing it on a miniature stand, sets it to heat above the flame. Then she makes her bed, and tidies up her room with business-like alacrity, and as the kettle begins to hiss, she takes from the chimney-piece a cup and saucer, a small tin of preserved coffee and milk, and a spoon. In a few minutes this bohemian girl has mixed herself a steaming cupful of the beverage, and abstracting a couple of biscuits from a small paper parcel, also on the chimney-piece, proceeds to enjoy her somewhat camp-like meal. But she wastes no time over it. Leone is essentially a business-like person. She has settled in her mind the exact hour at which she must set out, and she knows she has not many minutes to spare. In effect, gray dawn is beginning to streak the murky sky with light. She can hear a distant tower clock chiming the hour of 5, and she sets down her cup on a chair close by and takes up the little portmanteau. "Time I started," she mutters to herself, as she cons in her mind Mr. Trackham's instructions. Leonie is a most perfectly disciplined young lady. She has thoroughly learnt the lessons of obedience. It has never entered her head to disregard or evade her master's commands. Mr. Trackham has certainly succeeded in teaching her to take a pride in her work, and in training her to a faithful discharge of duty. He has reason to congratulate himself, and to boast that this girl-slave has never failed him yet. She passes along the passage leading to the staircase, and descends this ladder noiselessly. All is silent throughout the house, as she lets herself out of the front door and closes it softly behind her. Then she sets off at a smart walk along the crescent, and gaining a side street, turns down it. The street in question is more or less a mews, but as yet there are very few signs of life within it. Leonie, however, seems quite at home in this place, for she walks down it unhesitatingly, until at length she comes to a halt opposite a stable door. Drawing a key from her pocket, she unlocks this door and lets herself in. There are some half a dozen horses tied up in an equal number of stalls, and they greet her with neighs and a good deal of grunting and stamping about. A rough, shaggy-looking dog, with the coat and body of a staghound and the head and drooping ears of a bloodhound, rises from a bed of hay in the corner of the stable, and comes up to her with wagging tail and a doggy smile on his rough and shaggy face. She pats him kindly. "Come on, Nero," she says at the same time. "I shall want you." Then she goes to the corn bin and measures into the sieve a feed of oats, which she takes over to a bay horse at the far end of the stable. This produces a loud protest from the remaining 5 animals, which to anyone acquainted with horse language is unmistakable. Perhaps there is a kind corner in Leonie's heart. Maybe it is only to secure quiet. Who knows? But she fills up the sieve brimful once more, and divides the oats amongst the 5 protesting animals. At any rate, it gives them contentment for a while, judging by the crunching and munching that goes on. A little harness room adjoins the stable, and Leonie dives into this, and unearths a neat light man's saddle with grey girths and a pair of bright small steels. The saddle is quickly girthed on to the bay horse, and then a plain double snaffle is produced from the same quarter to be slipped in the animal's mouth directly he has finished his meal. Leonie is anxious to be off before the stablemen come in, which will be about 6 o'clock. Consulting her watch, she sees it is nigh on 5:30. As the clock chimes that hour, the girl leads the horse out into the mews, followed by Nero. Closing the stable door and locking it, she turns to her steed, and gathering the reins in her left hand, puts her foot in the stirrup and swings herself lightly onto his back. "Come on, Nero," she calls again to the dog, as she puts her horse into a trot and leaves the mews behind her. Her course is taken for Waterloo Station. None whose gaze fall upon her as she rides through the awakening streets, followed by her shaggy companion, would take her for what she is, a female detective in the employ of Mr. Trackham. But then a well-got-up detective ought to be unrecognizable, and Leonie, the handsome, gentlemanly youth to all appearance, is well got up. On reaching Waterloo, Leonie sees to the boxing of her horse and dog. She elects, too, to travel with them in the horse-box as far as Bracknell, which place is reached at 9 o'clock. Here the horse-box is run into a siding. Leonie loses no time, for she knows that every moment is precious. She sees to the unboxing of the horse, and before remounting him, slips a shilling into the porter's hand. "How far is it, the hut, from here?" she inquires as she does so. "What, the Duke of Ravensdale's hut, sir? Oh, nigh on 2 miles. But there's no one there, sir. It's shut up. There's only the forester and his wife." "Just the persons I want to see. You mean, of course— There now, the name has quite slipped me," exclaimed Leonie, with well-feigned appearance of annoyance at the name having just that moment escaped her memory. "Why, Miles Gripper, old Miles Gripper and his wife, sir," puts in the porter, eager to supply the young gentleman's defective memory. "They're well known to the country round, sir." Of course, of course. How stupid of me to forget," answers Leonie briskly. "Well now, my man, just tell me how I must frame for the hut." "Just cross that there bridge, sir, explains the porter, pointing upwards, "and bear away down to the right. Keep straight on that road, sir, till you can't go no further. There you'll see a road going left and right. Take the right turn, sir, and after that the next right turn, whatever is, and then stick to that road, and never mind any turns that you see, until you come to two crossroads, the left one with a signboard directing to Aldershot. Don't you go taking either of those two turns, sir, but ride on another 50 yards, and you'll see a small wooden gate on the left. That leads to the hut. It's away in the forest." "Thank you, my man," says Leone politely. "I think I understand. I go up over that bridge, bear to the right, keep straight on till I must turn right or left, then take the right turn, and the very next, that is, ride straight on until I reach the crossroads, then about 50 yards further, where a gate on the left leads up to the hut. Is that it?" "Exact, sir. You couldn't have it more exact, sir. If you follow those directions, you can't mistake," answers the porter glibly. The shilling and the young gentleman's whole appearance has impressed him. "Well, good morning, my man, and many thanks," says Leone, as she begins to move her horse away. She is surprised when the next moment the porter comes up alongside her. "Beg pardon, sir, no offence, sir, but be you a friend of the Duke?" Leone is perplexed, but she answers evasively. "What do you want to know that for, my man?" "Because," answers the honest fellow with an eager look in his eyes, "because, sir, I've been reading all about how the government is a-hunting of him and that great man, Mr. Hector D'Estrange. Least, they say Mr. D'Estrange is a woman. I don't know, and I don't care. I don't see what it matters whether Mr. D'Estrange is a man or a woman, sir. He's the people's friend, sir. He wants to help us poor folk. There is no humbug about him, sir, and we love him for that, we do. If you know them, can you tell me if they are safe, sir? Forgive a poor fellow asking this, sir, but oh, I'd die for them, I would, sir." The blood rushes to Leone's face. What is it that brings it there? Perhaps a vague, undefined feeling of shame that she should be bent on an errand so degrading with the true words of the honest working-man ringing in her ears. "Yes, they are safe," she says hurriedly. "Here, take this, my man." She throws him another shilling, and as he stoops to pick it up, she puts her horse into a quick trot, and widens the distance between herself and her interlocutor. What does Leone know of goodness, gratitude, or any high and noble virtue? In that young, cold, calculating heart of hers, what room is there for devotion or love? She wonders, as she rides along, why that man's words brought that flush to her face, and what that strange feeling was that made her heart beat and her pulse throb. She puts it down to a fear that her object and mission might be recognized. "I'm getting nervous, I believe," she laughs to herself. "That will never do. Mr. Trackham has always told me to be cool and self-possessed. What a fool I was to let that man see he had flustered me. Leone, you are an idiot." She tightens her horse's rein, and just touches him lightly with her heels as she speaks, and the animal breaks into a canter. Nero gallops happily by her side. The dog is enjoying his outing in the country. 2 miles at this pace is quickly got over, but Leone draws rein as he reaches the crossroads. To the left stands a signboard, and Aldershot is written on it. 50 yards further on," mutters the girl as she trots forward. The porter's directions are very exact. The wooden gate is before her. She rides through it, and enters a narrow carriage drive, closed in on both sides by tall pine trees. Thick rhododendron bushes fill up a few open spaces here and there. The little road is steep and precipitous, leading sharply upwards. Leone throws the reins on her horse's neck and gives him his head. She has no fear that her four-footed friend will stumble. Horse and rider know each other well. Suddenly, however, she picks up the reins and urges him forward. A sudden thought has struck Leone. She must not be caught napping. The time has come to employ her detective wiles, and she acts on the impulse that has seized her. Such a pace up such an incline is naturally trying to her steed. Thus, when rounding a sharp turn in the forest road, she comes into full view of the hut. Her animal's sides are heaving pretty freely, and he is decidedly blowing. She brings him up to the little front entrance at the same pace and reins him up abruptly. In another moment she has pealed the bell. She can hear a slight scuttling inside, and voices whispering, which causes a delay not at all in keeping with her plans, so she peals the bell again. Then steps come rapidly forward, and an elderly man in a dark green cord suit and brass buttons opens the door. "I have a message for the Duke of Ravensdale," exclaims Leonie in a low, confidential voice. "You are Miles Gripper, are you not? Ask his Grace if I can see him. It is of the utmost importance, admitting of no delay." Miles Gripper scratches his silver head and looks perplexed. He is a faithful servant and an honest one. His instructions have been most specific. He has been told to feign absolute ignorance of the Duke's movements or whereabouts, though he knows them well. But Leonie's words have staggered him. "Gracious!" he ejaculates. "But his Grace is not here, sir." "Not here?" gasps Leonie with well-feigned dismay. "Good God! What is to be done?" "Is his Grace in danger?" blurts out the forester tremulously. "Oh, sir, what is it?" "Danger," echoes Leonie. "I should just think so. Look here, my man, I have come post-haste from London to see him. He must be warned, or both he and Gloria Lara will be in custody before the day is down. Can I trust you to take his Grace a message? I was told you were a faithful and trustworthy servant of his." Miles Gripper is completely taken in. His honest heart bounds with loyalty at Leonie's words. "Ah, sir, and that's just true. His Grace has no one more devoted than old Miles Gripper. I'd give my life for his Grace, I would. But, God forgive me, how can I take your message, sir, in time? He's far from here by now." "What? Far from here?" again gasped Leonie. "But not out of writing distance, surely. Tell me where he is, and tired as my horse is, I'll do all that is in human power to reach him. God grant I may not be too late." What does Leonie know of God? Still less does she care about him. God, to Leonie, is an expression, a forcible expression, and no more. The expression serves her well on this occasion, however. Miles Gripper's honest heart is no match for detective acting. Believing that he is serving the Duke, he passes the secret, which he is bidden to keep, into the care of this apparently devoted and self-sacrificing adherent of his master. "And dread ye for a big-headed fool, when his Grace express forbade ye say aught of his whereabouts save to the Lady Flora," Leonie hears a sharp, angry woman's voice exclaiming. But she waits to hear no more. She is on her horse and trotting quickly down the hill with the secret she had been puzzling her brains how to win, safe in her keeping. Small wonder at Dame Gripper's ire. "Come on, Nero, laddie," laughs the girl detective. "I thought I should want you, doggy, but I can do without you now. However, come along." She rides back to the crossroads and the signboard. On one of this latter's arms is printed Marlowe. "That's it," she mutters to herself as she turns her horse's head into the long straight road, which, girt on either side by tall dark trees, stretches far as the eye can reach. "I'm safe on the track now, I am." Leonie is happy. One of the most difficult obstacles in her path has been lightly cleared, and quite unexpectedly, too. Yes, she is happy, if it be possible for one so hard and callous to be so. Perhaps the dawn of a better day is coming for this child of an unholy love. As she rides along in the bright spring morning, however, with her rough dog galloping by her side, she has no higher aim in life than to carry out successfully the little job which Mr. Trackham has confided to her care. End of Book 2, Chapter 10. Book 3, Chapter 1 of Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, by Lady Florence Dixie. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900. Book 3, Chapter 1. It is the last day of summer, and the evening hour is creeping on apace. A truly glorious day it has been, warmed by a brilliant sun, the heat of which has been tempered by one of those gentle zephyrs that love to play where all is warmth and sunshine. But now the day is dying, fading, as it were, gradually away. Time, which the science of man can never stay, stalks slowly on his path. It is he who declares that the spell of life which has lit the day with its brilliance must pass onward into the darkness of advancing night. For what is life but a greater day of warmth and sunshine, storm and rain? What is death but the night which brings rest after the toils or pleasures of that day? What is the future life beyond but a new day breaking into existence, perchance in a world more lovely than our own? So thinks Gloria Delia as she leans on her oars and watches the dying glories of this fading day vanish beneath the waves of the western sea. The zephyr which has played so joyously amidst the light and sunshine of earlier hours has fled to his couch of rest, and now not a breath stirs the glassy waters of Glenelg Bay, which, lit by the radiance of the setting sun, blazes all around like a lake of molten gold. Above its gleaming waters and those of Loch Eilert tower heather-girt mountains in their mantles of purple and of blue. Higher still above these well-clad slopes the grey stone of shaggy crags looks down, and higher yet above these lonely scenes the golden eagle hovers, secure from the destroying hand of man. Not altogether lonely, though, if one may judge from a pale, thin line of smoke that suddenly curls upwards through the still air from one of those high grey crags. It catches the eye of Gloria Delia as she leans upon her oars, and sends a flush of surprise to her thoughtful, dreaming face. "So soon!" she exclaims, and there is a ring of wonder in her tone, but she settles herself to her oars and sends the boat along with quick, powerful strokes. She has pointed its head for the open sea, straight, in fact, for the channel that joins the heaving swell of the grey Atlantic with the placid waters of Loch Eilert. Months have passed away since we were last in Gloria Delia's company. We left her when the spring of the early year was just budding into life. We rejoin her now on the eve of spring's destroyer's advent, autumn. How has it fared through these months of light and sunshine with this woman and her cause? A retrospect will show. We have seen how Leone, on reaching the hut, had found it vacated, and had ridden on in the direction of Great Marlow. Truth indeed, she took the same route over which Gloria, Speranza, and Evie Ravensdale had ridden the night before. No sooner had it been decided to quit the hut than Gloria had dispatched Rita Vernon to London to apprise Flora Desmond of the change, and then she and her two companions had ridden on in the darkness of night towards Great Marlow. On reaching the outskirts of the town, the three had turned down a narrow lane leading in the direction of Bisham Abbey Woods, and Gloria, with a confidence which familiarity with the place always engenders, had led the way. Finally the lane had opened into green fields with a line of bridle gates leading through them, and these she had carefully followed for a time. At length, however, Gloria had borne away from the beaten track, and directed her horse's head towards a long strip or belt of trees, at the further end of which stood a solitary cottage with a large barn behind it, and some compactly built dog kennels in the rear. In one of the windows of this lonely dwelling a solitary light was burning, a light which told the fugitive in silent words of the faithful watch that was being kept. Now this was the cottage of the head keeper of the Bisham Abbey estate, both of whose daughters were troopers in the White Guards regiment. The entire family was loyal to Gloria Delia's cause, and this cottage was one amidst many a dwelling of the people where Gloria knew she had only to knock to gain admittance, only to show herself to obtain a loyal greeting and hospitable and secure shelter from tracking foes. The organization which had thus contrived to spread a network of secret and devoted friends throughout the length and breadth of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland was surely no mean and contemptible one, and spoke volumes for the constructive and administrative capacity of Gloria Delia and Flora Desmond. In every county this network had its headquarters in the volunteer centers, with which communication was actively kept up by means of a code peculiar to this organization. Against these forces of a people's love, the government had brought to bear the forces of the law. All that money and power could procure were at this government's command. And yet the difficulty of working had become pretty soon apparent amidst a people whose lips refused to tell, and whose eyes became blinded by a sudden cloud whenever information was sought or demanded. In order to guard against the importation of informers into the volunteer ranks, Flora Desmond had issued an order to the effect that no more aspirants were to be enrolled, an order which greatly hampered and took by surprise the forces of Scotland Yard, which had counted on informers' assistance to a large degree in obtaining information. It was at the cottage, therefore, of staunch, true old Joe Webster that Gloria had sought her first refuge amongst the people, after her flight from the metropolis. It was from the same cottage that Speranza had bidden her child farewell before setting out on her voyage to the United States, as an accredited delegate to plead the Destrangite cause. It was at this cottage that Flora Desmond had secretly held counsel with her chief, and had arranged the details of the first public meeting at which Gloria was to appear. And it was at old Joe Webster's cottage, too, that Leonie, in pursuit of the role which Mr. Trackham had set her to play, had presented herself before Gloria, and representing herself as one who had left home and interests to serve the great cause, had implored Gloria Delara not to refuse her services, but to let her work for her even in the most menial capacity. The bright, earnest face of the girl, her dark eyes glowing with genius, her pleading voice and apparent enthusiasm, had struck home to Gloria Delara's heart, the noble nature of which could not suspect treachery to lurk beneath such evident devotion. Leonie's prayer had been heard by the woman who trusted her, and on whose betrayal and destruction she was bent. The first great meeting had been one of unlimited success for the Destrangite cause, and therefore of proportionate discomfiture and humiliation for the government. In the crowded Hall of Liberty, the Destrangite members had assembled to protest against the assumption by the Nationals of the conduct of affairs without first making an appeal to the country, and also to call for a free pardon for Flora Desmond and a fresh trial for Gloria Delara. Government reporters had attended and taken voluminous notes of the speeches. Policemen and detectives had assembled in full force by command of Mr. Mayhew, and established a strict watch. Proceedings, in fact, were in full swing, and it only needed the presence of one being on whom the thoughts of all were centered in that vast throng to complete the assembly. Suddenly, upon the lowest of the 6 circular galleries that surrounded the dome of the hall, 2 forms were seen to appear. No need in pointing them out to inquire who they were. The low cheer which greeted their first appearance soon swelled into a roar of wild, tumultuous applause and welcome, which flooded the vast building with deafening strain, and told of the enthusiasm and love that awoke it. What other being but Gloria Delara could have commanded such an ovation? Truth it was, she and her trusty companion Flora Desmond, who stood before them, habited in the uniform of the White Guards regiment in which the people knew them both so well. In full view of the crowded house, in full view of the Destrangite members, in full view of government reporters, and Mr. Mayhew's police and detective forces, Gloria had addressed the vast throng. Spellbound, the people had listened to her words of hope, of encouragement, and of cheer. And when, in conclusion, she had bidden them fight on for the right and actively resist wrong, the cheers had rung out again and again with a deafening roar. Yet even as those cheers began to die away and the people's eyes turned lovingly once more to their great leader, Gloria and her companion had vanished. And what had Mr. Mayhew's police been about? Why had they not arrested these daring 2? How possible? The only means by which the galleries above could be reached was through some 20 iron doors below. Yet when the police sought an entry, they found these doors securely barred by an invisible hand from within. Of course a cordon of constables had been quickly drawn around the building, and detectives have watched anxiously day and night. Futile, as it soon became evident, When news reached the government a few days later that Gloria Delara had addressed a meeting in the north of England, that the police and troops hastily summoned had attempted to arrest her, but that, securely guarded by the Women's Border Light Horse Volunteers, she had managed to effect an escape, and no trace of her whereabouts had up till then been obtained. Energetic authorities, however, took care to cap this unwelcome intelligence with the information that the police were prosecuting an unremitting search. Cui bono? Meeting upon meeting had followed. Concourse after concourse had assembled. Simultaneously they would be heard of in the north, south, east, and west of England, of Scotland, or of Ireland. No public placards or advertisements announced these meetings, and yet they were always well attended. It seemed as though some secret, mysteriously silent fiery cross passed through the districts in which they were held, but the authorities could not say for certain. They could only surmise. Machinery was at work beneath the surface which they had no power to fathom. The speakers at these meetings were manifold and various. The Destrangite members were particularly active, but after Gloria Delara and Flora Desmond, the people's favourites were undoubtedly the Duke of Ravensdale, Nigel Estcourt, Lady Manderton, Launcelot Trevor, Archie Douglasdale, and Jack Delamere. Wonder of wonders! What? Colonel Delamere? The swagger guardsman, the spoilt child of society, the man whose life had hitherto been one long succession of amusement and pleasure? Is it possible? Quite so. There is no impossibility when nature steps in to the rescue. What influence has been at work thus to change the current of Jack Delamere's pleasant but useless existence? What has induced him to take up the cudgels for Gloria Delara's cause? Aye, what? Ever since that evening when, in obedience to orders, Jack Delamere had charged the crowd which barred the way between his Blues and the White Guards, ever since that day when he had marked the heroism of those men and women that composed it, ever since he had seen them go down before the horses of his troopers, sacrificing their lives so that their idols might be spared, Jack Delamere had been a faithful and devoted adherent of the Destrangite cause. Perhaps, too, his love for Flora Desmond may have influenced him. Who knows? The influence of a noble and high-souled woman is surely the greatest incentive a man can have to do right. Money, too, had poured in from all quarters of the globe, and from all manners and classes of people. The women, who in the palmy days of Hector Destrange had responded to his appeal on behalf of the Hall of Liberty, had not been laggard when the author of its being had again called upon them for sympathy and aid. The sinews of war had flowed in rapidly, and none had commanded it more quickly than Speranza Delara. Such a state of things had of course become intolerable to the Devonsmere ministry, which in the early days of the movement had so confidently predicted its speedy collapse, as well as the arrest of Gloria Delara and Flora Desmond. Every effort to capture these two had, however, proved unavailing, protected as they had been by a people's love. A people's love. It was a noble gift to have won, a treasure of which they might well be proud, one which they might surely pray ever to deserve. None knew better than Gloria Delara and Flora Desmond that, without it, their fates must long since have been a prison cell and a felon's doom. In the eyes of this government, matters had become desperate. The efforts of the police had been paralyzed. Conflicts had taken place between the military and the women's volunteer regiments, and strong measures appeared necessary to check their disorders. Gloria Delara's enemies had pointed to the volunteer organization as the root of the mischief, and it had been resolved to destroy it. Parliament had been asked to grant exceptional powers to meet this dangerous combination. Parliament had acquiesced, and forthwith a proclamation had been issued declaring the Women's Volunteer Organization to be illegal, and decreeing the instant disbandment of its regiments. The exceptional powers had furthermore empowered the police to arrest and imprison without trial all women who should be seen wearing the uniform of these regiments, and it had likewise been decreed a felony to shelter or harbor the persons of Gloria Delara or Lady Flora Desmond, or to take part in any public meeting in which they should participate. This Coercion Act, the first which had ever been passed for Great Britain and Ireland combined, had rendered the position of Gloria Delara and Flora Desmond one of extreme peril, while threatening the liberties of thousands of their countrymen. A secret meeting had been called, the situation discussed, and it had been argued that for the sake of the cause thus threatened these two must leave the country. But how? That was the question. Every port and sea-going vessel was strictly watched. In this dilemma Archie Douglasdale had submitted a plan. This plan was that his sister and Gloria Delara, together with Nigel Estcourt and himself, should retire to one of his properties on the shores of Glenwig Bay, where, amidst its shaggy woods, nestled a little fishing box, remote from the haunts of man. In this lonely retreat, guarded by trusty Ruglan retainers, he had declared his belief that for a time they could rest concealed, while Evie Ravensdale, repairing to London, should from there direct the immediate fitting out of his yacht, in which, so soon as ready, he should put to sea and work round to the Sound of Erosite, where the fugitives could be embarked. And this plan had been approved of and acted upon. Gloria Delara, Flora Desmond, Nigel Estcourt, and Archie Douglasdale had taken up their quarters in this safe retreat, and Evie Ravensdale had repaired to London. With him had gone Leone, who had been commissioned to bear back the Duke's instructions when all was ready. It was a fateful arrangement, this last, but Leone had played her part well and had won the confidence of all. Thus it is that we find Gloria Delara on the last dying day of summer, amidst the scenes described at the opening of this chapter. Leone has arrived from London. She has been instructed, she declares, to inform Gloria Delara that the Duke's yacht Eileen will proceed to sea and cruise about in the neighbourhood of Muck Island, so as to avoid the steamer track. The Duke himself will make Glenwig Bay in a fishing smack, embarking everyone thereon the day after his arrival. This arrival is timed for today, and Evie Ravensdale has sent a private message by Leone asking Gloria to meet the smack at its entrance to the bay. At least so says Leone, and Gloria believes her. She has sent the former to the top of the high crag to watch for the advent of the smack, with instructions to light a warning fire on sighting it. We have seen the pale blue line arise, and now Gloria, with quick, rapid strokes, is pulling for the bay's entrance. Her heart is happy, for is not Evie Ravensdale at hand? She never dreams of treachery. The boat flies through the water, which parts with hissing sound on either side of the bow's keel. Now the splash and upheaving of the craft tells the rower that she has left the bay and entered the open sea. She casts a glance ahead, and sees the smack bearing down towards her, and then sees the sail lowered and the vessel hove to. Once more she plies her oars, for she has caught sight of a tall figure waving to her, and making signs to bring the boat alongside the smack. "Ship oars!" she hears a voice exclaiming as she nears it, and she obeys with alacrity. In another moment a sailor has seized the painter, and two others have sprung into the boat. She looks up, expecting to see the face of Evie Ravensdale. One glance, and she knows that she is betrayed. "Up with the sails! Starboard the helm! Put the boat about, and fetch yon lad off the rocks!" is the quick command she hears given as the sailors heave her aloft onto the deck, and two other men push her into the cabin below. Then the hatch is battened down. There is a coarse laugh. Once more has Leone won. End of Book 3, Chapter 1. Book 3, Chapter 2 of Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, by Lady Florence Dixie. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, Book 3, Chapter 2. "There's the smoke, Estcourt. Ravensdale must be in sight," exclaims Flora Desmond as she leans on her empty rifle and scans the peaceful scene far away below. "So soon?" inquires the young man, looking up. "We must have strangely miscalculated the time." "Well, there's the smoke right enough, Estcourt, and Leone is far too smart to make a mistake. However, no need to hurry. It is such a glorious evening, and the last for me on these dear old hills, perhaps forever." She says the last words sadly, and there is a yearning look in her fine eyes as they rove the familiar glens and corries, rugged crags and purple stretches, which she and Archie Douglasdale learnt to know by heart in childhood, in their happy hunting excursions together long ago. Far away below, Loch Eilert and Glenelg Bay shimmer in the setting sun, whose light is gleaming across the grey waters of the open sea. These two have been away all day after deer, and Archie Douglasdale is still absent on the same quest. They have not seen him since they parted with him on the Black Crags some 7 hours ago. Lord Estcourt rises and comes to her side. He is a tall, well-made man, with expressive features, and a pair of grey eyes which society has declared to be magnificent. Plenty of women therein have been willing to fall in love with Nigel Estcourt. No end of scheming and would-be mothers-in-law have instructed their daughters in the virtues, wealth, and charming characteristics of that very nice young fellow, and charged the poor things to exert their utmost to win him. But Nigel Estcourt has never yet been seen to pay court to any woman, and fashion marvels thereat. But since he was a boy of 17, he has held love's secret next his heart. It was at Ruglan Manor long ago, when, as a mere lad, he first saw Flora Ruglan, that Nigel Estcourt first opened the book of love. It was to him that she, his first girlfriend, had opened her heart, and it was to her that his boyish soul had responded. Born with a golden spoon in his mouth, with all that the world most covets, it was but natural that fashion should court him. But Nigel Estcourt was not responsive to its adulation, and snubbed it most unmercifully. When Flora Ruglan had married Sir Reginald Desmond, young Nigel had sorely grieved, but his friendship for her had not abated, for he loved her just the same. He was still only a boy, of course, and no one would have seriously predicted that this, his first love, would be his last. Other men had loved Flora Desmond, and loved her still. She has had no lack of offers since poor Reggie Desmond died. Over and over again has smart Jack Delamere pressed his suit. He has never loved any woman like he does her, but he presses his suit in vain. For gently, kindly, but firmly, Flora Desmond has told him that she will never marry again. She had told Estcourt the same thing when, for the first time, now 3 years ago, he had confessed his love and asked her to marry him. She had told him then that he must put that love from him forever, for the reply which she then gave him would remain unchanged. Yet, with tears in her lovely eyes, Flora had told him also how deeply she valued his friendship, how grateful and honored she felt by his love, and how she prayed that the strong, firm bond which had held them together so long, since as boy and girl they had first made friends, would endure through life. Perhaps if one thing had not happened, Flora Desmond might have returned young Estcourt's love. Perhaps if the wand of fate had not decreed otherwise, her heart might have gone out to him. It seemed almost natural that she should love him, he who had received her earliest confidences and been her first friend. But one thing had intervened to make this impossible. Flora Desmond loved another. Some women can love much and often. Some can almost adore and then forget. To Flora this was impossible. Hers was a heart which could not lightly love, which, slow to appreciate, would nevertheless, when once unlocked, love truly, faithfully, and well. And thus it had been with this woman so seemingly love-free. For years ago that feeling had flooded her heart, had taken possession of her, never to pass away, when, as Lady Flora Desmond, but a year after her marriage, she had seen Evie Ravensdale for the first time. Who shall describe or fathom the depth of a true and pure love? None have been able to do so yet, none ever will. Flora's love was such as asked for no return, content only to be allowed to love. And yet, who knows that there may not have shot, now and again, through Flora's heart, when, after the death of Reginald Desmond, She and Evie Ravensdale were thrown often into each other's company, a gleam of hope that her love might in time come to be returned. It may have been so, but if so, it vanished finally and forever when the personality of Hector Destrange was revealed in Gloria de Lara. Unmistakably, on that evening when she had rescued this latter from the prison van and had handed her into Evie Ravensdale's safekeeping at Montague House, Flora Desmond had read in the dark and beautiful eyes of the young Duke the secret of his heart. It never entered her mind to cavil at his choice or to resent it. No pang of jealousy had shot through her heart against the woman to whom his love had been clearly given. Only when she had read his secret had the feeling rushed over her that the love which she had nursed and cherished for so long was imperishable and impossible of recall. Not that she wished or sought to recall it. Flora would have sooner died than part with the first true love of her life. It was to her a treasure that she prized beyond expression, priceless to her in value. He lays his right hand on her shoulder for a moment as he stands by her side, and she feels it tremble. "It is a day I shall never forget, Flora," he says gently. "I have been very happy. It will be something for your old friend to look back upon when you are far away." "What do you mean, Estcourt?" she inquires hastily. "But you are coming with us." "No," he answers decisively. "I have other work to do. I shall never rest till I have obtained for you the pardon that will extricate you from this outlawed life. I can be of use to you by remaining. I have some influence still in high quarters, and I could do you no good by going to America. Of course, I should like to go. You know, Flora, I am never so happy as when I am with you, but I don't mean to think of ego on this occasion." The tears rise to her eyes. "I shall miss you, Estcourt, dear old Estcourt," she says softly, and then her hand steals into his, and he feels the grateful pressure in its firm touch. The blood rushes to the young man's face, for that touch thrills him through and through, though the ring in her voice tells him that affection and affection only, not love, is there. "You'll never miss me as I shall you," he answers passionately. "Ah, Flora, you don't know the dull, blank void that comes over me when you are not by. You don't understand the lonely feeling that masters me, the yearning to see your dear face again. Of course, Flora, you cannot understand what I suffer, for I don't believe you know what love means. I have often heard you called the cold Lady Flora. I begin to believe you are rightly named." It is her turn to flush now, but she turns her head away that he may not see the hot blood in her cheeks. Evie Ravensdale's face is before her in imagination. She sees the dear, dark, dreamy eyes, the clear-cut features, the beautiful forehead around which the raven curls are clustering. She sees him as plainly as though he stood before her, for is not his presence burnt into her mind with the exactitude of reality? She loves him with all her heart and power and soul and mind. No sacrifice for his sake would seem hard. To die that he might live would be a joy. If Flora Desmond does not know what love means, then who does? But Estcourt can only judge by what he sees. He knows she has rejected the love of many men. There is no one, save himself, to whom she appears to give a preference, and has she not told him that she can never marry him? Is he not justified in his conclusion, therefore? Perhaps so. Few men have ever been able to read a woman right. She pulls herself together, however, and turns his remark off with a jest. "Cold, am I, Estcourt? An iceberg, probably. I almost think so, too, for it's actually beginning to feel chilly up here. How blood-red the sun has turned! Mark my words, we are in for a storm this evening, and I doubt any embarkation being possible tomorrow. I know these old shores well." "If you are chilly, Flora," he says almost bitterly, "we had better make haste down the crag-vale. It would not do for you to catch cold." Her evident desire to turn the conversation has not escaped him. It hurts him, and he shows it. She marks the bitter tone of his voice. Flora knows Estcourt so well. A woman can generally read a man pretty correctly if she chooses to, of a certain if the man loves her. She faces him suddenly, with the glow of the blood-red sun lighting up her handsome face. She is earnest in what she is going to say, and she looks it. "Estcourt, dear old Estcourt, let there be no misunderstanding between us two, and on the eve of parting. This may be the last opportunity of telling you what I wish to. Don't jibe me as cold and heartless, for it is not true, not true. Do I not know how chivalrously and devotedly you have loved me? And am I not grateful to you for your noble and generous love? Why should I ask the question because you know it? You know I would not speak untruly, and I tell you that your love is very precious to me, and I value your great friendship more than anybody else in this world. Were you not my first friend? Am I likely to forget that? But Estcourt, dear old man, you must not throw your love away on me, for I shall never marry again. I shall always look on you as my first, best, and truest friend, and love you dearly, very dearly as such, but I can never marry again. No, Estcourt, never." "Nor I," he answers quietly, with a sad smile. "You are hardly the woman to bid a man marry where he does not love. Flora, I have loved you ever since I first saw you. I shall never love anyone else but you. At least you will do me the justice to believe that I am as unalterable as you are. Let us never bring this subject up again. Let it abide by the crag Vale Cairn." He kisses her hand tenderly and respectfully, and then he lets it fall. "Let's go down now, Flora dear," he says gently. "I wonder why Ravensdale smack has not turned the point yet. It ought to be round by now if Leone were right." "I'll back her to be right," answers Flora with a slight laugh. "She's not likely to mislead Gloria, who, by the by, I saw turning the point in her coracle quite 10 minutes ago. They'll be round in a second, I dare say." The two scramble down the rough face of the mountainside in silence. The thoughts of both are busy. Suddenly, however, Estcourt brings himself to a halt and calls out to Flora, who is a little ahead of him. "Flora, who can that be?" Her eyes follow the direction in which his hand points, and she sees a 4-oared boat coming out of Loch Eilert into the Sound of Erisig at a rapid pace, and heading for Glenelg Bay. "It must be Archie," she calls back. "I suppose he got to the far end of the lake and has come back by water. The boat is Bruce Rugland's, and the oarsmen are his 4 sons. I know it and them well." He comes running down to where she is standing. "Flora, dear," he says quickly, "use your eyes. The man in the stern is not Douglasdale. It's Evie, as I live. What can Leone have meant, and why does not Gloria come back? Surely there cannot have been treachery. My God, surely not." But Flora never stops to surmise. Her face is deadly pale, and she has turned at his words, and is hurrying with fleet steps down the mountainside, with Estcourt following quickly in the rear. Fast, faster she goes. Flora Desmond is as nimble as a deer. No monstrous, tied-back petticoats encumber her. She is habited in the neat, graceful kilt in the tartan of her brother's clan and her own, which suits to perfection her supple, well-made form. In it she is free to use the physical powers which nature has given her, and which she has never sought to stunt or to curtail. She makes straight for the shore, and as she moves along she loads her rifle. Then, as she reaches the water's edge, she fires it off. This attracts the inmates of the boat. They look her way and perceive that she is signaling to them to come inshore. In a moment Evie Ravensdale has turned the boat's nose in her direction, and she sees that he is urging the oarsmen to exert their utmost. The men endeavor to obey. They bend their backs and send the boat hissing through the still waters. Foam flakelets fly before the racing keel propelled by irresistible force, and yet to Flora Desmond it appears to come but slowly. "Back, watermen!" she shouts as the boat nears the shore. "Don't beach her! I want to push her off and jump in!" Estcourt is beside her now, and they are both up to their knees in the water. The men are resting on their oars as the boat glides slowly forward. But Flora and Estcourt have it by the prow. "Now, escort, push off!" exclaims the former, as bending chest downwards she arrests its course. The edge of her kilt in front sinks into the water. In another moment her knee is on the boat's edge, and she is standing in the bow with her companion by her side. "Evie," she exclaims in a low, excited voice, "how is it you have come this way? Is anything wrong? We expected you in a smack, and Gloria has gone to meet you." "A smack?" gasps the young Duke. "What do you mean?" But she does not answer him. She has turned and is addressing the four clansmen. "Rugglins," she says quickly, "pull to the point for your lives. Pull, men, pull! Pull with the strength God gave you. God in heaven, pull!" They answer to her appeal, do these young giants. Do they not know her well? Is she not a Ruglin? Are they not Ruglins too? Have they not as children played with their young chief and his sister, joined in their rambles, mingled with their sports? Well do these Highland laddies understand her quick command, understand it and obey. She has crossed to the stern, where the Duke sits staring mutely at her. "Give me the helm, Evie," she says quietly. "I can steer the shortest cut. Don't look like that, Evie. It may be all a mistake." But her voice tells him she does not think so. The boat tears through the water. The clansmen are doing their best. There is not a word spoken. Only the splash of the oars, the dull thud of the twisting rowlocks, the hiss of the boat's keel break the stillness of Gleneag's Bay. They have reached the point now. 4 more gallant strokes from the men whose brows are thickly studded with the bead-drops of extraordinary toil, and the boat rises on the first rolling swell of the open sea. The smack is there. It catches the straining eyes of Evie Ravensdale, as he springs up and gazes across the great grey ocean waste. To her dying day, Flora will never forget the terrible groan of agony which bursts from him. Aye, the smack is there, but they have come too late. The brown sail is spread, it is already far away, vanishing into the creeping, dull, dark veil of the advancing night and rising storm. End of Book 3, Chapter 2. Book 3, Chapter 3 of Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900, by Lady Florence Dixie. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Gloriana, or The Revolution of 1900. Book 3, Chapter 3. All shall come right. Everything shall be explained. You shall have immediate liberty, if, on behalf of your mother, you will promise me what I ask. I know perfectly well she will do it, if you ask her. Now, will you? The speaker is a middle-aged man, with deep dark eyes, handsome features, and bold, resolute carriage. Grey hairs peep here and there from out his thick beard, mustache, and whiskers, and there are grey hairs in his once raven hair. He is dressed in a navy-blue serge suit, and wears the buttons of the Royal Yacht Squadron. To all appearance, the person he is addressing is a young man of some 23 or 24 summers. He is tall and slight, with a face of extreme beauty. He has rich gold auburn hair, and his eyes are deep blue in color. Nothing will compare with them but the sapphire. He wears a well-fitting shepherd's plaid kilt, stockings to match, and silver-mounted brogues. A loose white flannel shirt and waistcoat and jacket complete his attire. "I will not," is the stern, cold reply which he gives to the speaker's query. This latter grinds his teeth, but checks the rising anger within him, and speaks once more in a persuasive, almost pleading voice. "Think again. Consider all that depends on your decision. After all, my request is perfectly honorable. I simply ask that she shall consent to remarry me." "Great God! And you call that an honorable request, Lord Westray? You think it a simple matter that my mother should wed again my father's murderer? I tell you, a death of hideous torture would be more preferable to me than that a fate so awful should befall her. Cease, I pray you, this subject. I have but one answer to your hateful proposal, and that is no. Have you weighed well in your mind the fate that awaits you, Hector D'Estrange, if you persist in this refusal? asks Lord Westray threateningly. "My name is Gloria de Lara, my lord, not Hector de Strange, as I think you know full well. The fate that awaits me I fully realize. I am condemned to death for a murder never committed. I am to die that your vile vengeance on my beloved mother may be fully wreaked. Do your worst. I do not fear death, and my mother will bear the blow as bravely and as nobly as she has borne others." She folds her arms proudly, and there is a world of scorn in her beautiful eyes as she fixes them on the cowardly brute before her. A wild gust of wind shrieks angrily above board as the smack rises and plunges in the trough of a choppy sea. The blood-red sun has vanished, an inky darkness has set in, and the wind is rapidly increasing from a fresh breeze into a regular fierce and nasty gale. Lord Westray staggers and almost reels up against her as the smack lurches forward on the crest of a more than usually excitable wave. There is a rush of feet on deck, and men's voices are heard shouting above the noisy wind. She starts back from him in horror. She would not touch him for the world. His very presence in the close, stuffy little cabin seems to stifle her. Gladly would she seek an asylum in the ocean's angry waves, and trust to fate to enable her to reach the shore or die. The cabin door opens, and the skipper peers in. "Beg pardon, sir," he says, touching his oilskin cap, "but I must put to sea, sir, I must. We're in for a regular duster. I daren't coast no longer, sir. It's pitch black, and the shore for miles along is almighty dangerous." "I'll come on deck, Hudgens," answers Lord Westray quickly. He is a good sailor, but the intelligence does not please him. As he turns to leave the cabin, Leonie steals in. She is drenched with sea-water, and her hair is wringing wet. As she seats herself in a corner of the cabin, she glances shyly at Gloria. This latter returns the look with one of mingled pity and contempt. Leonie's eyes drop before that look. For the first time in her life a feeling of shame rushes over her. "This is a terrible storm," she says in a low voice, as a wave crashes along the deck, part of it finding its way into the cabin. "I heard one of the men say he did not think the boat would weather it." "God grant it may not," answers Gloria sternly, and then, as if influenced by a sudden impulse, she continues gently, "Ah, Leonie, child, what could have tempted you to act so basely? What have I ever done to you that you should treat me thus?" "I did my duty," answers the girl sullenly. "I did what I was ordered to do. It is my trade." "Your trade, child? Good heavens, what are you, and who ordered you to betray me?" "My master, Mr. Trackham," answers Leonie simply. "I belong to his detective gang. I've served him ever since I can remember. I've never failed him yet, and he told me not to fail him this time. I promised I would not, and I have obeyed him." There is an evident sincerity in her tone, and Gloria, with her power of deep insight into character, reads Leonie's at a glance. "Have you no mother, no father, my poor Leonie?" she inquires softly, as she comes over to the girl's side and lays her hand on her curly head. "Mother? Father? No, of course not," answers Leonie with a slight laugh. "They are both dead. Mr. Trackham always says he's acted father, mother, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, and cousin by me. I don't quite know what he means by that, but that is what he says." "Poor Leonie, poor wee Leonie. God, what a fate! You are not to blame, then, my poor child. Ah, how fully I forgive you," says Gloria, as with a sudden impulse she stoops and kisses the girl who has betrayed her on the cheek. Only another revelation has come to her from that cesspool of modern Babylon. Only another fearful wrong unknown, unstudied and unforbidden, brought to light. Leonie looks up quickly. There is a queer expression in her intelligent eyes. "Why do you kiss me? Why do you speak so kindly? Why do you forgive me for betraying you?" she inquires rather eagerly. "Because I believe in God," answers Gloria gently. "God? Why, Mr. Trackham always laughs at God," interposes Leonie with a shrug of her shoulders. He always tells me that God is an invention of the devil, and all clergymen and priests are fallen angels. Oh, hush, Leonie, hush, my poor, poor child. This is terrible. Do not talk in that awful way. And the tears start trembling to Gloria's lovely eyes. Leonie, God is good. He is our friend. He helps those who pray to him. If we die tonight, we shall be brought face to face with him. I don't understand what you mean, answers the girl quietly, but I do know this. I expected abuse and reproaches from you, but I have received only kindness, forgiveness, and gentle words. You have kissed me, and no one has ever done that before. I am sorry now I betrayed you. Yes, I am, and I will try and save you if I can, unless we are drowned tonight. Do you think we shall be drowned? You can swim, I know, but I can't. Mr. Trackham never taught me how to do that. If it comes to swimming, I will do my best to help you, Leonie, at least so long as God gives me strength to do so, answers Gloria quietly. Again Leonie looks up. In her untrained, untutored mind, nature is beginning to assert its sway, and gratitude knocks gently at her heart. You would do that for me, would you? You would try to save my life after what I have done to you? Did God teach you that? She asks with a quivering voice. Yes, Leonie. Then I love God, and I love you. May I give you a kiss, just as you kissed me? I want to show you how I love you, cries Leonie with a half-sob. No one has ever been kind to me like this before. She rises as she speaks and takes one of Gloria's hands. This latter is almost startled by the extraordinary likeness which, for a brief moment, sweeps across the girl's features, a likeness to Bernie Fontenoy. There is a terrible crash overhead. It sounds like falling timber. Again a rush of feet, and Gloria and Leonie hear the skipper's voice raise in loud command. He is ordering out the boat, Leonie. That must have been the mast that went with that crash. I can feel by the movement of the ship that she's helpless. We shall drift on the rocks, and then she'll soon break up, exclaims Gloria almost eagerly. Then we shall be drowned, answers her companion in a quiet, composed voice. I'm not afraid. I think I should have been if this had happened yesterday, but I am not now. She stops suddenly as the cabin door creaks open to admit Lord Westray. He looks flurried and anxious, but his glance at once sees Gloria. The smack is practically a wreck, he says quickly, and we are going to take to the boat. I will save you if you will promise me what I asked you. Go, cries Gloria sternly. Now you know that I would rather die than do so. Go, bad man, and may God have mercy on you. He looks at her furiously, but there is no time for arguing. The skipper is calling to him to hurry. So be it, he bursts out with a coarse laugh. Your blood be on your own head. I'll leave you and save the gallows the trouble of hanging you. Come on, girl. These last words were addressed to Leonie. What? Go with you and leave her? I'll drown rather, exclaims Leonie with a contemptuous laugh. Drown like a rat, then, he says with an oath, as he bangs the door and leaves them. They hear him scrambling up the little companion ladder. They hear his voice shouting to the skipper, but the wind shrieks louder, and the howl of the tempest drowns all other sounds. Again there is a rush of water along the deck, a hissing and washing sound, as the huge wave which has occasioned it tears madly on its course, part of it bursting open the cabin door and flooding the floor on which Gloria and Leonie are standing. We must get on deck, Leonie. We can't stay here, child. Here, take hold of my hand. We must keep together, exclaims Gloria in a quick, peremptory voice. They are half blinded by the thick spray which sweeps in their faces as they stagger up the ladder, clinging like grim death to the rails. It is pitch dark. Not the faintest gleam of light gives them the smallest indication of their whereabouts. Only the white foam of the towering billows now and again flashes across their aching eyes, blinded by the salt sea-water. Plenty of wreckage is floating about on the deck, and amongst it a life-belt knocks up against one of Gloria's ankles. With a pleased exclamation, she at once secures it, and proceeds to slip it over Leonie's shoulders. "If this poor wreck founders," she explains as she does so, "this will keep you afloat, child. I am glad I saw it." "But you," says Leonie quickly, "you have not one." "Never mind me, child. You forget that I can swim. If we manage to stick together, this belt will be a great help to me, as you will see. And now, Leonie, we can do nothing but cling to these rails and trust in God. Keep a good lookout for the waves. When you see one rushing this way, don't try and stand up against it. It will only knock you backwards, but bend yourself, hold your breath, and put your head through it. Quick, have a care, child." She utters these last words in a sharp warning tone as she tightens her grasp on Leonie's hand. A dense, dark wall seems to tower above them. A swirl and a rush is all she hears as a monster wave envelops her and Leonie in its folds. It tears the rail to which her left hand clings from her grasp. She feels herself lifted up like a straw and borne forward by the resistless rush and volume of water. With the desperation of death in her clutch, her right hand still grips the still, cold fingers of her young companion, whose grasp has slackened altogether. A floating spar strikes her with some force. She clutches at it, but it sweeps past her and is gone as the wave carries her ever onwards. A sudden ebb in the resistless current, as if by magic, arrests her course. She feels herself dragged back along the line she has come. Then the volume of water abruptly leaves her, and her feet touch the deck again. Gloria is up in a moment. She knows there is not a minute to spare. In her present position, another such a billow would sweep her clear of the smack altogether into the raging sea. "Jump up, Leonie!" she shouts, but Leonie never stirs. As Gloria tugs at her arm to try and arouse her, she knows by the dead weight of the girl's body that Leonie is either dead or insensible. With a supreme effort, she raises the now helpless girl in her arms and staggers forward to the cabin with her burden. A wave strikes her as she reaches it, and dashes her once more to the ground. For a second time she is swept like a straw along the deck, and for a second time the ebb arrests her progress and leaves her in the same position as before. "Oh, God!" she gasps. "How long? This is indeed a living death." She still grasps the stiff, clammy fingers of the helpless girl, but hope has left her. She only now wishes that death may come, and come quickly. There is a wild shriek ahead. It rises above the wind's roar. Then a ghastly, unearthly sound comes out of the blackness of night. Even on death's threshold it awakes to attention the senses of Gloria de Lara. Through the blinding spray she strains the last glance on life which she feels is left to her. High above, like a huge black mountain rising suddenly out of the sea, looms a gigantic apparition. It towers above her like some fearful, unknown spectre. There is a flash of light in the air, a loud shout, a grating sound. Loud o'er all shrieks the tempest whistle. She feels the smack part from her. A mighty current sucks her beneath the waves. Down, down it drags her into the bottomless abyss of the ocean's awful crater, as the great ship sweeps forward on its course. Even in this moment of death's agony, Gloria's brain is clear. She relaxes her grasp of Leonie, who, with the life-belt around her, has that one straw of hope to cling to. As the waters of the surging Atlantic sweep over her, her last cry is to God. Her last vision of the life which she is quitting is the face of Evie Ravensdale. End of Book 3, Chapter 3.